the usual kind of technical opposition that when you don't want anything to come forward on the merits, you put all these technical issues up in front to try and get the case dismissed. And unfortunately, a number of the members of the bench out there were prosecutors in that office at the time.
Well, as you said, we have the coroner, one of the top in the country, saying he was shot repeatedly in the back of the head. So we know that's a lie. Well, we know the guy that Mr. Caesar was a known spook behind him. It's important. People say this is 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 45 years ago. People are saying, why does this stuff matter? It matters because the same... Even as Bruce Willis finally woke up seeing some of my films when Rick Linklater gave them to him a few years ago, he said, oh my God, the people that killed Kennedy are in control now. He even said that then in Vanity Fair after we broke it before he went public. So, even if somebody like Bruce Willis can wake up, the general public should be able to wake up. But you've been around a lot of these elitists and a lot of these big power brokers in your life and talked to folks that have also been around them. What is the mindset of the type of people that will stage terror attacks in the U.S. to blame it on enemies and launch wars, who will kill presidents, who will kill people running for president? What is their mindset? Obviously it's money and power and control, but what really drives them at the end of the day?
I think at the end of the day, they are driven by the things you mentioned. They're driven by money and they're driven by power. They are in many ways the agents of a corporate industrial and military complex that dominates public and increasingly private life in this country, and they get rewarded when they perform in a compatible way as public servants. They often end up with the boards of directors of many of these situations. Former head of American Express indicated that 5,000 people run this republic, and he said, they meet. They meet at a place called the Bohemian. Their representatives meet at a place called the Bohemian Grove, and they usually sidle up there about once a year. And critical decisions are made up at the Bohemian Grove by the representatives of these people.
Yeah, that's Super Class. We interviewed him, and I've snuck into Bohemian Grove. It's going on right now. Stay there. We're going to talk behind the scenes with Mr. Pepper about the Super Class. They run it. They can care less about you. They're turning the country into a prison for you so they can carry out their criminal activities untouched. Stay with us. William Pepper's our guest.
Hey, Bon.
William, please continue, sir, with you were getting into the super class and how they meet and what they do.
Yeah, well, I think they basically dominate. They dominate public life and in this country and every aspect of it, and every major corporation and financial institution is dominated by them. When Jack Kennedy came into power, there had been developed before he came in a plan for the invasion of Cuba, and that plan was a false flag operation that was to involve alleged Cubans in committing terrorist acts on American soil to justify the invasion of Cuba. When that plan was put on Kennedy's desk, he said, "Oh my God, these guys are nuts." The name of that plan was called Northwoods, and it's now well known. People have written.
Let me stop you and just interject a question. I want you to get into Northwoods, Mr. Pepper.
Yeah.
I saw one little frontline blurb before it was even declassified about him being upset about invasion plans that had provocations. Then years later, in 2000, Northwoods, ABC, Baltimore Sun, as you know, come out with it. But it looks from history, and you know more about it than I, that Kennedy was kind of a hawk and believed in mom and apple pie and kind of naive in a way, super patriot, PT boat and the whole 9 yards. And that now I've had others like yourself say that when they brought in this plan to stage terror attacks to him, that's when he said, "I'm tearing up the CIA, we're getting out of Vietnam, and you guys are fired."
Well, he was very naive. Jack Kennedy in many ways was an adolescent right straight into the presidency. He was bright, he was well intentioned, but he was naive. And he couldn't believe that some of these things that were being proposed to him, and of course the Bay of Pigs, which he eventually was saddled with, and had misgivings about, but nevertheless let go forward to a point which taught him a great lesson, and that's when he fired Dulles from the CIA. But the interesting thing, Alex, about the Northwoods plan was that was one of the first, I think, confrontations that he had with Lemnitzer, who was the admiral who drew it up. And what I learned fairly recently is that the name of the golf course where the chaps at the Bohemian Grove play. It's a 9-hole golf course. They all play there.
It's Northwoods.
Those who play, it's called Northwoods.
And they brag that they cooked up the Manhattan Project, Star Wars, all of it at the Grove, at the Chalet, which our hidden cameras have infiltrated. And
is that right?
Oh yeah, I ought to send you my film. Oh, I've actually made 2 films on that. We're going back to the main audience right now.
Right.
You could spend 50 hours with William Pepper. He has knowledge about every facet. In fact, he has knowledge about all the things we cover here, and then he'll always have a little more for you. And he was just pointing out that Operation Northwoods had the same name as where they hatch all this stuff, the golf course outside Bohemian Grove, where they pick up their male and female prostitutes as well. And I've been there and seen it with my own 2 eyeballs. It's in the order of death. And my second film about Bohemian Grove. And they put the guy in prison who snuck in to get that footage for us. I snuck in and we've only gotten death threats in 2000. They just arrested the editor of Vanity Fair, tried to infiltrate. No doubt they had moles inside Vanity Fair that... See, the Force is with us, folks. That's why we're able to do this, and I thank God every day I'm still alive. The Force is not with most of these other people. Sir, in closing, talk about your book. We got 5 minutes. Anything else you want to add, Mr. Pepper, and then I want to get you back on in the near future to talk about some of your other amazing experiences.
Well, I mean, Active State is out as a paperback. I am representing Sirhan. We're pushing forward with that. I've also agreed to represent some victims of 9/11 in another lawsuit that I'm developing. That is a very sensitive lawsuit because it relates to the whole background and funding of 9/11. So that's going forward. These things, unfortunately, Alex, cost a great deal of money, and I'm having to try to earn funds out of regular legal, corporate, and other international legal work that I do to try to pay for it all. So it's not very easy to do that. The main book that I have virtually completed now is a book on Hugo Chavez Frias, the president of Venezuela, who has been, of course, a thorn in the side of the Americans and their efforts.
I meant to get into that with you last time you were on. We've got to set you up to come on and talk about, you know him well, the real Hugo Chavez, because that is obviously so important to what's happening geopolitically. And that leads me to my final question for you. Do you get death threats? And people ask, well, why is William Pepper still alive if he's done all of this? I would venture to say they don't want to make you a martyr. They don't want to put an exclamation point behind everything you've said and done. They don't want to highlight the work because you've already done your body of work and continue to do it. It won't help them to kill you. I mean, is that correct?
I think that's right. I think they should have hit me early on in the King work, and that no one would probably have noticed, and that would have been the end of it. But when the King family got involved, and they became really a part of the work that I was doing and in support of it, then it became very difficult for them at that point in time, and since then. I think they believe if they can just shut things down, whether it's a 9/11 work that I've encouraged or my support of Chavez and back and forth from Venezuela and the Sirhan case, if they can shut them down and use any other means, they try to do that rather than kill. The question is yes, there are death threats all the time, but they're not. I don't take them as being serious. I think in many ways, if they could let people like me, people like you, go about the business of dissent in a controlled way, so that we're not really impacting on
it creates the illusion of liberty, and then they say, "Oh, see, they're just nuts."
That's exactly what it is. It's only when you start to get very close to the bone, the way Martin King and Bob Kennedy were,
getting power,
that they take you out.
They were trying to get control through the electoral process of the main executive mechanism.
Yes, that's right.
They were approaching the levers of control.
That's right, and that's where they took them out.
Whereas we're just down here trying to wake up the sheep who are happily chewing their cud. William Pepper, fire out websites people can visit.
I'm sorry?
Fire out your websites. Give us your websites.
Well, I don't personally have one. I've never had one, but one of the readers has organized a website called ActiveState.org, and so that's the name of the second book, so there is a website there.
ActiveState.org. Tell you what, stay there. Back in 1 minute for 2 more minutes.